Smoke chokes the narrow streets as the heart of the ancient world turns into a blistering furnace of ash. Historians claim Nero watched the horizon with a lyre in his hands, mocking the suffering of his own people as the flames devoured the Palatine. Yet, beneath the charred foundations, modern excavations tell a radically different story. Was this catastrophe an act of madness or a calculated purge? We descend into the ruins to decipher the truth hidden behind centuries of biased chronicles and political sabotage. Rome, the undisputed epicenter of the ancient world, finds itself teetering on the precipice of absolute transformation during the summer of the year 64. Beneath the sweltering heat of the Italian sun, a catastrophic inferno erupts, consuming district after district and reducing the magnificent structures of the Palatine to nothing but smoldering ruins. This is not merely a tragedy of wood and stone, but a pivotal moment that redefined the seat of imperial power forever. While traditional narratives paint a portrait of a chaotic capital caught in the grip of divine retribution, we pivot our perspective to analyze the stark reality beneath the soot. Recent investigations challenge the long-standing assertions that define this era, forcing us to look past the dramatic accounts penned by later chroniclers. By synthesizing forensic data with historical scrutiny, we uncover a complex web of urban planning and political maneuvering that contradicts the popular myth of a madman fiddling while his civilization crumbled into ash. As we navigate through the layers of scorched earth and strategic propaganda, we confront the uncomfortable possibility that the blaze was not a spontaneous accident, but a calculated purge. What hidden motivations truly fueled the flames that birthed a new imperial identity, and how did the strategic manipulation of this disaster cement a dynasty that would dominate the Mediterranean for centuries to come? Under the sweltering heat of the summer, the crowded labyrinthine alleys of Rome became a death trap waiting for a spark. We examine the socio-political instability that permeated the capital, where the dense concentration of wooden insulae and the desperate poverty of the Suburra created a powder keg. Observations of the period reveal a city strained by rapid population growth and administrative neglect, fostering deep-seated resentment against the ruling elite. When the inferno erupted, it did not merely consume structures, it obliterated the social fabric of districts clustered near the Palatine. This devastation shattered the illusion of imperial stability, turning the once-ordered center into a chaotic landscape of suffocating ash. As we sift through the theoretical models of the city layout, the sheer speed at which the fire consumed the heart of Rome suggests conditions that were primed for total destruction. The lack of adequate fire breaks and the frantic overcrowding meant that even a minor ignition could escalate into a continental catastrophe within hours. By analyzing the structural vulnerabilities of the era, we uncover that the misery of the citizens was a constant, ticking clock, independent of the emperor's intentions. Yet, the coincidence of such a perfectly timed ruin raises suspicions that the disaster was not merely a tragic accident of urban planning, but a catalyst that would be manipulated by those at the very top. When the smoke finally cleared, the social order was fundamentally broken, leaving a vacuum where the desperate and the powerful collided in the ruins. We are left to wonder if the collapse of these districts was the inevitable outcome of centuries of systemic fragility or a deliberate act of erasure. Tacitus and Suetonius carved the marble of history with a quill dipped in pure venom, turning Nero into the absolute embodiment of vice. By examining these registers, we detect a narrative structure specifically engineered to delegitimize the Julio-Claudian rule, portraying the monarch as a lethargic hedonist who preferred plucking at his lyre while flames devoured the epicenter of his own glory. This vision did not emerge from impartial observation, but rather from the burning resentment of a senatorial aristocracy whose privileges were constantly challenged by imperial reforms. The historians, allied with the most conservative factions, articulated a version of events where the inferno functioned as divine retribution for the emperor's perceived madness. Analyzing the consistency of these chronicles, we uncovered deep fissures in the account. The supposed presence of the ruler on the hills while the city collapsed appears more like a literary construction aimed at inciting popular contempt than a documented fact. The mastery with which these chroniclers wove the desperation of the populace with the disdain of the sovereign solidified a Neronian identity that has survived millennia with barely any scrutiny. We are confronting a sophisticated propaganda machine that transformed a tragedy into a political weapon, silencing any alternative perspective with astonishing efficiency. If the victors write the history, here we observe how the survivors of political trauma erected a wall of ink between the truth and posterity, forcing us to wonder if what we perceive as historical knowledge is not, in reality, merely the echoing resonance of an ancient hatred that still obscures our collective judgment today. Sifting through the layers of calcined earth, we encounter a stark discrepancy between the chronicles of the elite and the physical reality of the site. Scientific analysis of the strata at the Roman Forum reveals that the heat intensity was localized in specific zones, suggesting a pattern of destruction that defies the theory of an uncontrolled, sweeping inferno. Crucially, the imperial registers place the emperor in Anzio, miles away from the capital, at the precise moment the first embers began to consume the timber structures of the central district. This geographical alibi renders the popular accounts of a lute-playing monarch standing atop the Palatine, observing the carnage with artistic detachment, historically untenable. By cross-referencing meteorological data from that summer with the structural remains found beneath the volcanic ash, we observe that the wind direction would have necessitated a different, more deliberate fire-setting pattern than the one recorded by his enemies. The absence of soot layers in specific, high-status areas adjacent to the initial ignition points strongly implies a calculated containment of the disaster, rather than the chaotic, random sprawl of a natural catastrophe. This forensic evidence strips away the dramatic mythos, revealing the cold, logistical precision that dictated the movement of the flames. When we look behind the veil of these biased historical accounts, the silence of the primary data speaks louder than the vitriolic prose of the senatorial class. We are forced to consider whether this blaze was not a failure of governance, but the opening move in a grand, unseen design that repurposed the city's very foundation. Blueprints unfurl over the smoldering debris, unveiling an audacity that few contemporaries dared to challenge openly. As we scrutinize the new mandates imposed after the disaster, we discover that narrow, perilous alleyways were replaced by wide avenues and fire-resistant stone structures, a maneuver that transformed the ruin into the ideal opportunity for imperial modernization. This intervention was not a fortuitous act, but a technical reorganization of space that consolidated control over the masses, drastically reducing zones of potential revolt. While the city suffered, the administrative apparatus operated with staggering speed, relocating the population to sectors where surveillance proved far more effective. Within this same arena, we witnessed the systematic pursuit of minority groups, signaled as convenient scapegoats to divert popular discontent toward an internal enemy that was easily vulnerable. Evidence suggests that the reconstruction did not seek the welfare of the destitute, but the establishment of an unbreakable hierarchical order, where every new building served as a visual reminder of sovereign power over the ashes of the past. By analyzing modifications in the urban fabric, we grasp that the Inferno acted as a social filter, purifying areas of greatest political instability under the guise of civilizatory improvement. This void in official records regarding the true authorship of the initial spark, compounded by the speed of the reforms, suggests to us that the catastrophe was, in essence, the most effective tool of political engineering designed to subdue the capital and ensure the permanence of imperial dominion for generations, as if the silence of the archives were the loudest confirmation of a design hidden in plain sight. Smoke thickens, obscuring the truth as the infernal blaze reaches its zenith, devouring the very soul of the capital in a fury of gold and charcoal. We stand at the precipice of a definitive rupture, where the accusations against the sovereign collide with the chilling efficiency of the subsequent urban reconstruction. As the flames roar, we observe the terrifying alignment of a collapsing social order and a cold, administrative opportunity that emerges from the embers. Did the monarch seize this chaos to manifest a new vision, or was he a convenient scapegoat for a city burning from within due to its own systemic, rotting negligence? The heat intensifies, melting away the boundaries between historical victim and calculated architect, leaving us to navigate a landscape defined by ash and ambition. We are confronted by the haunting possibility that the most enduring empires are forged not in peace, but in the deliberate destruction of their own past. How can we distinguish between the tragic victim of a hostile historiography and the mastermind of a brutal, transformative cataclysm when the fire itself consumed the only records that could have cleared his name? The Inferno demands an answer, yet as we sift through the carbonized remnants of the Palatine, the silence of the records becomes the loudest testimony of all. We find ourselves trapped within this loop of uncertainty, realizing that our understanding of this era is as fragile as the scorched marble beneath our feet, forever caught in the flickering light of a fire that refuses to be extinguished. The infernal glow that once consumed the capital now fades into the cold finality of the historical record. We have traced the fractures in the narrative, exposing how a calculated administrative purge was masterfully disguised as a chaotic catastrophe. The ruins of the Palatine tell a story not of a madman's artistic whims, but of a sovereign reordering the physical world to secure his absolute domain. By peeling back the layers of propaganda, we reveal that the fire was the crucible for a new imperial identity, a necessary destruction to forge an unshakable hierarchy. The ashes have settled, yet the ambiguity remains a deliberate trap. As we close this chapter, we realize that the truth of that summer was never meant to survive the flames, leaving us to forever navigate the shadows of a rewritten history. True knowledge isn't given, it is earned by those who seek it. This channel is for the thinkers, the curious, and those who demand more from history than just dates. If you are one of them, subscribe. Let's claim our intellectual heritage.